What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 413. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron, aka New Chair Who This.
Oh, that's
Chair
right.
Who New Chair Who Dat. Wow, look at
Yeah.
that upgrade.
And John I've already commented that I had a new chair a few episodes back, but I also have a new-ish chair. Steve, how recent is your chair like when you bought it?
It's a very I'd say in the last 3-4 years.
Okay. So we all have reasonably solid chairs. If anyone out there was wondering about that, our chair situation.
Still under warranty.
Now that Ronald's finally just died.
Mine's not because my cat's been picking at the pleather. So it's already junk. Yeah.
Dang.
So like you're in one of those comfort looking gaming chairs, Ronald. Like you're ready to lean back and get into the physical media comments. Like it's just ready for it.
What separates a regular chair from a gaming chair? Is it just like the fact that there's two colors?
No, you know what it is, Ronald? Like a gaming chair will be like honest about what materials it's made of, kind of.
Yes.
And like it's made more to look ergonomic and like, it's made of some kind of polymers or something. Whereas my chair is like an imitation fancy chair. It's like it's like things, parts of it are made to look like nice wood that aren't, and parts of it are made to look leather that aren't. So I think mine is more like fake office chair, whereas you've got a little bit more of like, you can look at this chair. It's being honest about what it's made of.
And I also feel like gaming chairs, usually most of them are not see-through. So like ergonomics could be a checkbox. Like mine is ergonomic, but mine has that like meshy looking office chair look. But yours looks like thick. Like I'm not looking through that chair because it's got to accommodate.
That's what she said.
Yeah, right. I mean, you have that in common, I guess.
So I have a fake boss man chair. You have like a cube warrior kind of chair. You've got one of those that's like functional, but it's like nothing fancy, you know.
No. Yeah, but yours, you got that.
I have like
it looks like it's got some plush in there too.
Yeah.
I have like the internet has spoken. The game was taken down on Steam kind of energy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because like when you make those comments, you really bear down on that chair. It's gonna accommodate that angst.
Puts a lot of
my butt has never felt so good. I gotta tell you.
That checks off box too. Yeah, I mean that sounds right.
Well, I postponed getting this chair for a really long time, and Nikki kept saying, well, you got to pick out a chair. And I was like, I hate doing anything like that for some reason. I don't know why. Well, I got a new chair, and it's weird how like you get like the right thing, and you're like, oh yeah, this is really comfortable. Oh my gosh, this really feels good when I sit. And it's like, yeah, that's what a chair is supposed to feel like. It's like rather than this old chair I had where like the stuffing was coming out of the bottom, and it was like an old wooden chair. Nice chair, but it's it served us well. Its time is done. And Ronald, I staved off what you had happened. If anybody is for some reason watching or listening to this episode and didn't watch or listen to last week's episode, you can find out why we're talking about chairs.
Yeah.
Just listen and wait around. There's a kind of like a twist in that episode.
500 people watched a clip of me falling on YouTube, which is kind of crazy. Thank you for
500 people, but how many times each? Because I know my wife had it on a loop in the living room, like on Saturday night. Like I'm like, what are you watching? And she's like, I can't stop watching this video.
No, I love the Steve's like look of shock.
Do you like that musical bed that
I love it? I love that little cue.
You know where I got that from? The Atlanta episode where he races Michael Vick.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Because he's like, yeah, I could beat him. I love that clip, man. I love that clip so much.
I knew I'd heard that music somewhere before.
You're right. You definitely heard it.
Well, anyway, we're all here, all chaired up.
Yeah.
And hopefully we all stay in our chairs, it seems. It looks good.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we're going to get into my pick from required viewing for this week, which again was Infested, which is one of the newer Shudder titles. Then we'll kind of go, I wanted to mention a couple trailers that came out before we get into some of what else that we've watched. Now Ronald has some things in queue here to talk about some physical media for us.
Let's get physical
corner. Yeah, so we'll get to those in a moment, but let's jump right into required viewing. Again, last week we made a pivot. I reselected my choice from my round, and the thing on the top of my Twitter feed recently had been a lot of people showing love for this movie Infested, which was a Shudder of release the week prior. It's basically like a spider creature feature film taking place in a French apartment building. And there'd been a lot of love going around for the filmmaker, Sebastian Vanacek, who was also recently announced as being the director of like the next Evil Dead film in the series. And just people kind of loving on this film and seeing like the direct line that could draw for him to an Evil Dead film, which was cool to hear. And personally, after watching the movie, it makes me even more excited for whatever that will become, whatever that movie looks like. But I think we talked about it briefly last week. But had you guys heard about this film? Had it been on? I know, John, you said you'd kind of seen it on your feeds as well. But
I mean, it was I think the reason, back to the chair episode, the reason why I didn't react immediately when Ronald fell was because I think at that point I was trying to find who it was that had tweeted about this movie that I had. And so you'll notice if you watch the video, I notice after Ronald has fallen. And so when I look, it's like, oh, he's completely gone.
You're piecing together.
Yeah.
Why are we down one?
Yeah. What's just going on? What's going on right now? I'm scared. But no, it was Stephen King that had tweeted about it, saying,
right.
That it was, like he'll do that. He just kind of chooses to kind of blast or boost something like that. So
sure.
So no, that kind of put it on my radar. But because Stephen King had shared that or had tweeted that, several people that I also follow were sharing that, saying, "Oh yes, this is true," or "Oh, I can't wait to see this," or whatever. So that's what put it on my radar. And that's the extent to which I was thinking of it, was that it sounded creepy. That I knew I had seen people say basically that, like, if you're an arachnophobe, this movie is going to give you PTSD, and I think that, like, I can totally see that, being true, because I'm not like particularly, like, spiders I think are creepy. I think I have the appropriate sort of normal reaction to like certain things about spiders that makes them good source of creepiness and in stories, and even sometimes when you see one in life. But I don't know that I have that like arachnophobe response. But I know people that probably couldn't have watched this movie because of that. So
right. What about you, Ronald? Had you heard of it?
Yes, but I knew it as Vermain.
Verminus or whatever. Vermines. Yeah.
So
I forgot you were the fancy one. My bad.
Yeah, I knew it as that.
Chair's fake fancy.
I guess. See, it's weird the way Shudder labels their things as like original movies, because sometimes they'll be in other places, and then Shudder, I guess it is original. Once they distribute it, it's originally theirs. So I kind of like that. But yeah, I heard about it as a French.
It's very Netflix of them, isn't it? To like acquire something and then call it
and then it goes. Yeah. So I'd heard about it kind of in that way. Every once in a while, I'll be in like a Reddit thread, and they're like, "There's a movie you have to see," and this was one that was kind of like, I heard Record. I heard Attack the Block, these things I'd kind of heard, but you putting together the synopsis you put together was like Attack the Block beats. You put another movie together.
Well, it was Arachnophobia.
Arachnophobia meets Attack the Block. And for some reason, that made my brain go crazy, because I'd kind of not watched it. But for some reason, you saying those two things together, and of course, Steve picking it, made me really excited to see it. So I was ready.
What'd you think of it?
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's no other way to put it.
I loved it.
It was so goddamn good. And it was so unrelenting in how crazy it was. I guess what I need to know, and you typically do some BTS research. How much of that was practical, and how much of that was
not the K-pop, not the K-pop research though, right?
Not which members are currently. We're currently in BTS, but some behind the scenes, because I know you sometimes you'll know when it's available, because sometimes it's not available, but so much of this looked practical.
There's a pretty good mix. Like, I was watching the video.
Okay.
It's like they use like 200 actual spiders in the shoot.
Right.
But they also did a lot of CGI. But also the movie is very kind to the CGI, because it's dark and it's like it's really well done in terms of that, in terms of how they chose to deploy the effects and how they chose to.
But even still,
Yeah.
it's not sitting. It's it's funny because people kind of mention that sometimes it's like leeway for CGI, but sometimes you'll watch a movie and it feels like the CGI is still sitting on top of the darkness. And it
Right.
Right.
still did a really good job of lighting it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how the hell did they pull this off in a way that, obviously there were parts where I'm like, okay, this is clearly CGI, but there were lots of parts that just felt so real. There's something about the simplicity of throwing the Molotov cocktail at the spiders, and they were like, you missed. And then they went around it. That felt so goddamn scary. And so like what spiders would do, they move very naturally. I guess that's another thing that I noticed too, that you know, it's like CGI horses. You see CGI horses, you're like, that's not a horse. But
Yeah.
for some reason, for
Right.
the spiders, it just felt very real.
Now
Uh
that's a horse.
now
That's not a
that's
horse.
now that is a big ass spider coming
the
out
the
of the
um
wall.
the thing about I mean, but I guess what I mean about I think it's clever to do what they did with
No.
like the
Oh
use of the
yeah.
darkness. I think what you're saying is true, that some people try to get away with that and they don't have the style to pull it off. This movie had
Right.
like visual style, like right from
Yeah.
the first scene. It almost, for me, if I had a complaint about this movie, it would
Mm.
be that it was almost one note, because right from the start, every scene, it's like almost at a Terry Gilliam-esque kind of feeling of like every room is like cramped and claustrophobic and dirty and full of detail. And so I never felt totally like there was fresh air in this world, you know what I mean? Like, which I
Yeah.
think leads into the movie. But I do think by the time it got to the end, I was so ready to be out of that environment. That I was ready to fight those cops too, like I was ready to fight my way through to get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
man.
no, I think that what's interesting is that this guy has the Evil Dead movie coming, when this movie really reminded me a lot of Evil Dead Rise.
Sure.
Mm.
Yeah.
As much as Wreck, as much
Yeah.
as Quarantine, as much as the other things that were mentioned. I would say that the comparison to Wreck and Evil Dead Rise to me is more germane, in the sense that if you heard this was like Attack the Block meets Arachnophobia, you might be assuming it was more fun. And I do think there are some kind of fun moments in this, and I might have enjoyed even more of those kind of gross out moments, because I think there were some great gross out moments, and I was like
For
wondering
sure.
what else are these spiders going to do to the human body. Like I thought they were going to lay eggs in someone's eyes. I mean, I
Me
didn't know what
too.
was going to happen, but in some ways, I'm glad that these characters didn't die that horribly. But it's like there are a few like sort of horrible deaths, and then the rest of it
Yeah.
is more about this core group of characters that you're concerned about what happens to them, which again is
Yeah.
is a mark of a decent. Which again, maybe that puts it in that Attack the Block zone of like there's a core group of people that you don't feel like are expendable. They're not just fodder for the spiders,
Yeah.
even though they do get whittled down. But no, I thought that it was it like kept impressing me with the filmmaking, and I will say maybe especially in the first half or so, I was just really enjoying like the camera work and the way that the way that the perspective you have on the scene is not like mimicking a spider's perspective, but you're kind of weaving around through the scenes and through the apartment building the way that we know the spider is kind of making its way. And so I like that sort of ensemble of characters that forms in a story like this. It's like the pleasure of a lot of zombie movies or anything like this, where it's like a siege mentality, is like who ends up in the group that's trying to get from one place to another. And I thought that
Yeah.
story was reasonably well handled. I can't remember if it was on this show or not that we talked about something that I do sometimes, where it's like I like to picture like a horror movie or a genre movie, and then picture like what movie would it be if it didn't have the horror elements, you know?
Mm.
And there's like a human story in this movie that is interesting enough, even if it didn't turn into a horror movie. There's like a friendship that we learn the
Yeah. Yeah.
story
Yeah.
of, and I mean, maybe it wouldn't be enough maybe for a whole movie, but I do think the way that that story arced pretty nicely with the actual story of them trying to get out of the building, so that by the time we learn the ins and outs of the friendship and what their history was, I think that it was like, oh, I now feel like these characters would be talking about this right now if they had a little moment to breathe. I believe these conversations would happen. Sometimes movies don't sell you on that idea, that in the middle of a life and death situation that there would be time for character development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought this movie did a pretty good job, and I don't know if that's the script, which seemed like a pretty good script, but I really think the acting is what really kind of took it to that place where it was almost melodramatic how sort of heavy the emotions were being played between the characters. But I think it, as with any kind of horror thing, if you're feeling sort of isolated and trapped, and these characters are going through something emotionally tough as well, You know, that always adds to the tension.
Yeah, I feel like this is the kind of creature feature or even just, you know, horror film in general that is like just so entertaining and fun to watch. You know, like I think like the comparison to Attack the Block, Arachnophobia, both movies that are a blast to watch, and you know, kind of the marriage of that kind of setup. But the characters were great. I feel like the irony of like the opening sequence being like in a desert landscape where there is nothing but open air and space, and like you see the ferocity of this creature right from the jump, and like how many there are, and you know their
How
attempts to
fast they
catch them.
are.
Yeah, and them
Yes.
catching, and even when you see how fast they are, like they still catch them and box
Yeah.
them up. You know, like it's just really great. I thought that the opening scene was great in the sense that the rest of the movie feels so contained and claustrophobic, and gets even more so
Yeah.
as the movie goes along. So like that inverse setup is great. And yeah, I just really thought all the like little pieces that come together with the friendship and like their love for these like animals or these reptiles or like these exotic insects and things like that. They kind of bonded them, and they kind of can, you know, connect on that in some ways, even if it's adversarial at the start. That stuff all worked really well, and
they don't spoon feed you that stuff either. Like,
right,
you
No.
don't even know when Jordy shows up. You don't
Yeah.
really understand the context of who he is. I mean, like I didn't, at least right at first, understand like
well,
what I was supposed to think about him really. But when he showed
right.
up,
They like intentionally show like the picture of them
Right.
when he gets back with the spider, and you're like, oh, there's him and a friend.
yeah.
And then you see the guy, and you're like, he comes into the shot, and he knows everything about these
and he hides
creatures.
the picture. He doesn't want him to see that he's got the picture out, which I
He
thought
turned
was
it down. Right.
yeah.
That's great. I mean, that's all like nuance. That's so clean and easy.
That's all you
Those
need.
little things that just like don't happen a lot in movies like this. So all that just adds up to just a really great viewing experience. Like I would highly recommend this for any sense of like horror creature features, just like a thriller in a tight space, like whatever itch you have to scratch. I feel like anything in that lane, those lanes, this really was incredibly entertaining too. And the characters were like so cool and like just different from one another in ways, even though they're in the same situation or the same environment. Yeah, I don't know. And like I don't know, just like little things. I just loved all like the focus around the shoes and like the boxes of the shoes and like the connections between the shoes and the spider. Like it was little things like that. Like that's this guy's like bread and butter, you know, in terms of where he's at right now in his life, and like how he's making money and things like that. And it's just like that's really kind of what kicks a lot of this off to begin with. It's just craziness. But yeah, this was great. I genuinely loved it. And again, it's on Shudder. It's funny you mentioned the Netflix comment earlier, Ronald, because I don't know. Did you guys notice Netflix in like the opening production credits?
Yes.
So like they've got some kind of, I don't know if it's like French distribution,
probably a French
or
distribution.
yeah, like some sort of international thing. But you made the comment about Netflix. It's like actually Netflix has some hand in it.
I watched a 4K rip we were talking about. It was a 4K rip that had the entire Netflix logo at the beginning. So it was like the long, it was like the weird one, like the prestige one that they have for what's another one? The war movie. So I have a copy of what the hell is the name of it? It got a sound award.
All's Quiet on the Western Front.
Yeah, All's Quiet on the Western Front. And there's like this special prestige sort of beginning that they have. Like, oh, this is premium Netflix. You're getting Netflix on
Netflix Gold.
Yeah. And it had that at the beginning.
Wow.
By the way, man, like the spider sounds.
Yeah. And they didn't go, I thought about it before the movie, and then I thought about it in the middle of the movie, but I forgot to note it throughout. But I think they didn't do the typical thing people do with spiders, which is put in that string plucking sound. That's like the sound that they usually use for spiders.
Right.
I don't think we got that. That kind of added.
I don't remember that either. No.
But I was thinking it was just going to be a movie full of that, you know. But I honestly I kind of I forgot to make a note, and then in the middle I started noticing that I wasn't hearing that. But what you were getting was this weird like little this weird little clicky sound that they were
Yeah.
making that was like
I
really
love this, just like the
creepy.
little, like I love the little, just like that, like the scurrying sound
Yeah.
too, like the
Yeah.
just like if you like tap your nails along a
Yeah.
desk or something like that, like it's
But like, but it's as though they have some kind of like mechanism that was making a little kind of clicking sound
yeah.
that was just like really unsettling. And I do think the movie makes a political, there's a political dimension to it that I think may have been lost on me a little bit just because this is a French film, but I sort of felt like there was some indication that by the end of the movie, it's not like we're respecting the culture of the spiders at the end, but there is some kind of analogy drawn between the way the people are treating the spiders and the way the police are treating the people that live in the building. You know what I mean? There is
Right,
some
right,
weird
right.
thing
Yeah.
about like exterminating and treating like you're less than human and all that. That's like,
right.
but I couldn't quite tell how much that was like some kind of social commentary that was really would be obvious to someone who maybe understood the context of this movie being made versus just feeling like the movie is at the end, that standoff between Caleb and the sort of monster spider. There's a weird sort of respect almost of like, we don't have to fight. We don't have to kill the spider. We just have to get past it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that there wouldn't have been a choice if he wouldn't killed it if he could, but there was a sort of a sense of like, I met a spider on the road and we nodded at each other and we walked past each other. You know, I thought that was an interesting moment, but that moment was the most horrifying one because that spider was like, yeah, would mess up your car.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. But I think that, yeah, I think it keeps it just, you know, whatever details that could clutter up a story like this aren't there to make you go, wait, if that's what's going on, what about this? It's like it's a little bit crazy that the spiders get that big that fast and that they reproduce that much that
Yes.
fast. But I feel like that's where the sort of, if we are going to say this movie has that kind of B movie fun of an Attack the Block or Arachnophobia, that's a little bit where that comes from. It's just once the situation escalates, it goes, it's like it's completely every place in the hotel, in the apartment building is just full of
Yeah.
spiders, you know. I feel like that's the one thing
Terrifying.
you sort of have to buy. But yeah, if you've ever had a feeling of like you know a bug fell on you or was near you and then it got on you and now you can't find it. You're wondering where it
Yeah.
got to on you and you're like, so you're patting your arm and you're looking, this movie is like that feeling times 10. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that is
Yeah.
one of the most effective things. That first death, the guy who bought the shoes, when he thinks there was one spider in there and
Dude.
he's like relaxed, and then suddenly
Oh
so many
my
more rush out
God.
and it's too many for him to possibly brush off.
Yeah.
It's like that might have been the most effective moment of just horror for me, because that was like, that's the thing that, yeah, you would hate that.
Yeah.
I would
And when,
hate that,
like, the-
Ronald, getting bitten
Me
to death
too.
by giant spiders.
Yeah. The scene with like the older lady that was like a maintenance sort of person.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I felt so bad for her. She sprayed that. Yeah, it was just too much.
Mhm.
It was good though. I really enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad you both liked it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Very cool.
I mean, knowing that this person is doing an Evil Dead movie, honestly, is like, or supposed to be.
Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Hey. Oh. Let's go.
Because if there was anything I might have liked to have seen in this, not that I wanted the spiders to have like a plan or something, but I did keep wondering, like, are the people going to get infected by the spiders and start acting like, you know,
Yeah.
doing something or whatever? So I would love to see what this aesthetic carried into that more supernatural possession direction of an Evil Dead scenario. I think that
Right.
you could do a lot, especially with these characters in the close quarters and how, you know, those characters turning on each other, which is the heart of Evil Dead, is, you know, I think would be good. So
So what do you
Yeah,
got
we-
next, John? You're next in the list, right?
yes, I am. Now, this is a movie that I was thinking about, and now I'm sort of choosing to do it because the person that wrote it is a screenwriter named Eleanor Perry, and I found a book that she wrote called
Mm.
Blue Pages, which is supposedly a thinly veiled memoir of her life in Hollywood in the 60s and 70s as a female screenwriter when there weren't a lot of female screenwriters.
Mhm.
She and her husband were he directed and she wrote. They were a team that made a few movies together. And her book Blue Pages is about their relationship. It's like one of those where you change the names and treat it as fiction, but you're essentially telling
Okay.
your story. So yeah, that's something I'm reading right now, so I'm kind of curious about this movie that they made together, which is another movie that I've heard about over the years, and I've always been curious about. And it's kind of an interesting sounding thing. Do you know the story by John Cheever, The Swimmer? Ever heard of that?
No.
Have not.
The premise behind the story is, and it's a kind of conceptual short story. The idea behind it is that a guy who is swimming in a pool realizes that he could get across town back to his place by swimming in this pool and then jumping out and then going to the next pool and swimming in that, and that it basically forms like a river uh, to his home. So he basically swims across everybody's swimming pool to get to his house. But it's like a very weird conceptual short story. But it was made into a film in
Wow.
1968 called The Swimmer, starring Burt Lancaster. And
Okay.
it's like supposedly one of Burt Lancaster's best movies. I don't know that much about Burt Lancaster. I've seen a few of his films, but I know that he's a pretty big name. So
Mhm.
I'm interested in this, but it's supposed to be, a lot of people, comparisons say that it sort of feels almost like a, a conceptual sort of Mad Men episode, the way that it's like really
Oh,
carefully
wow.
drawn and with kind of like snappy dialogue. But what supposedly happens in the movie is, as he swims through these swimming pools to get home, each place he stops in, there's almost like a little scene that plays out that's like a part of his life or a part of his psychology or something like that. I really don't know. It's supposed to be very, very weird, but also kind of good, and well written and well acted. And who knows? I have no knowledge of it outside of just, I remember reading the story, The Swimmer, in college. So I've always
Mm.
been curious about this one, and now I'm reading the book by the screenwriter. Supposedly, this does tell the story of making this movie with her husband. So maybe I'll have some interesting behind the scenes facts about Eleanor and Frank Perry, who, like I said, were the writer and director, respectively, of The Swimmer. So from 1968, starring Burt
Cool.
Lancaster. And the poster says, "When you talk about The Swimmer, will you talk about yourself?" I mean, come on, guys, this is going to be a head trip.
Oh,
I don't know.
wow. That sounds cool.
Well, I mean, it is like, as I was explaining it to you, I was like, it sounds so much stranger to explain than it ever has been to just read. It's
Right,
one of
right.
those things that a short story can do, where it plays out like an idea, and the short story is all about like isolation and um, you know, you get more of a character study. It's only like 10 or 12 pages, but the movie obviously has to kind of fill that out. So I think what it is kind of like every place he goes, there's a little vignette that plays out that I think we begin to discover is sort of telling the truth about this guy's life and why he's alone
Okay.
and what he's really doing. So yeah.
So it looks like it's on Amazon Prime Video. So like
Yeah.
included
Yes,
within the,
streaming.
and
Yeah.
then yeah, and then everything else it's rental for $3.99. But yeah, this looks really interesting.
Cool.
I'm thank you. Thank you. I wouldn't have jumped to this. I like stuff like this. Like give me some older stuff to watch. I appreciate it.
Well, sometimes I
Maybe
think it's
it'll
it's interesting to see, and kind of nice to see that, even maybe even more so back then, but that back then they were already making movies that now would feel like sort of a high concept indie film. You know what I mean?
right,
Kind of
right.
kind of a niche item. But also, I will say that the fact that it's only a 95-minute movie was one of the things that encouraged me. If I'd seen that
Right,
this
right,
was a
right.
3-hour movie with this concept, I probably wouldn't have forced you guys to watch it. But it's only 95 minutes. And I also do think, like, when people start to say, "Oh, this is one of Burt Lancaster's best performances," he's one of those actors who has a certain kind of tough guy persona, and 1968 is right around the time that those guys were puncturing their persona a little bit. So it might be a good performance too. So
Very cool.
Cool.
All right, so let's move out of that. I wanted to mention a couple of trailers really quickly. We don't need to spend a lot of
yes.
time on this, but
Mm.
there were two trailers that came out over the past couple days for some pretty big summer titles, and they have a commonality that I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
We have A Quiet Place Day One, which is released at the end of June. The second full length trailer came out for that. Again, I'm in on this movie already. I love the Quiet Place series, but this trailer definitely kind of reveals a lot more. You see some more of the cast, specifically more of Joseph Quinn and Alex Wolff, who I don't think many people even realize was in the film.
Yeah, I've seen people
Mm.
saying that.
Which is cool. I'm
Yeah.
a fan. But again, I thought the trailer was awesome. Um, overall, both of these movies, I think these trailers, these second trailers, are just both really great trailers. But the second one was Twisters, which comes out the week before Deadpool and Wolverine in July. Glenn Powell, Daisy Edgar Jones. Actually, looking into it more, the cast for Twisters is kind of crazy. In terms of a lot of young talent, including the next Superman is in Twisters. David Cornsweet, Mara Tierney's in it, Kiernan Shipka, Katie O'Brien, who was just in Love Lies Bleeding, Anthony Ramos, Sasha Lane, Brandon Prieff, who most people probably remember from Nope. I don't know, just a really, really awesome cast in this, and you can see a lot more of them in this trailer. But this trailer specifically, I texted it to you guys earlier this week, and Ronald kind of hit on the same exact feeling that I had watching it, was that like this just looks like a big ass 90s blockbuster, and it's kind of like it's 90s IP, 20 some years later. But we're all big Glenn Powell fans on this pod, and I'm very anxious and excited to see him in another kind of leading man, kind of starring role. I was again already excited for Twisters because it just looked, the first trailer I thought looked great, but this one gives a lot more, and it just kind of has, looks like the visual effects are really good in it. I mean, especially the tornado stuff could be really cool. But yeah, I don't know, just like two really solid, better than solid second trailers for some big popcorn movies for the summer. And it just makes me feel that, like, within a month we have 3 movies that look really, really good in the middle of the summer. And I don't know, did you guys have any feelings about it in general, or what was your take on these?
Twister or man. I mean, it just looks action packed. And then the world of whatever these the different methods that they have to conquer the tornado just look really cool. I'm pretty excited about that. It's just like the clamps, literally this old school way of thinking of it. Let's just clamp ourselves to the ground, and then another person's just trying to manipulate the twisters through these little nano devices. It looks really cool. And then geez, what is that movie's name? What's the other trailer? Quiet Place.
Day One,
Quiet Place. Big Quiet Place fan. Lupita Nyong'o she's must see TV and movies. So anything she's in, I'm there.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is a prequel situation,
Day One.
This feels like I can't help but watch this and feel like, damn, what could Cloverfield have been? It's the same. It has the same feel as the Cloverfield. I recently watched it. I was like, oh, this has the same feel. But I just mean in terms of trajectory and this movie.
I guess I love 10 Cloverfield Lane, but I do think you're right that like overall as like a franchise,
as a franchise,
Cloverfield doesn't really feel like you'd have to really like work hard to try to turn all those Cloverfield movies into one mythology. Whereas with Quiet Place, there is a sort of, it's simpler and maybe not as like pulpy, but it has like they've developed it more carefully. You know what I mean? Like they've almost kept it simple. I'm expecting this new one to take us to some places and show us some stuff with these creatures that we haven't really seen before. I don't want it to just be kind of setting up the world that we know. I hope that there are kind of some surprises in there, but I think that cast makes you hopeful that they've got some interesting characters, which is like the most that you would hope for with a prequel like this. Is like, are we going to miss the characters that we know? But I think that with Joseph Quinn and Alex Wolff and Lupita, like that feels like I'd follow those characters around in that type of scenario for sure. So And as far as Twister versus Twisters, Twister was never like really one of my movies. I will give you that I think this new one really does look like one of those movies that could just really work, like as far as a big screen effects thing. And I think there is a kind of nostalgia for 90s IP right now. And I think this is kind of like it's almost a cheeky way to do it with just the twisters, putting the plural on there. And, it's very much like Aliens.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's that legendary story of that.
But like, there's a poster out that people have been making fun of because they seem to be facing away from the storm, But if you look in the rearview mirror of the truck,
Yeah, I
there's a
know.
storm that they're looking at, and I'm like, I don't know that that gag totally works in the poster. It does sort of look like they're facing the wrong way, even if the poster is a little smarter than that. And so I thought to myself, I wonder if this movie is just generally going to be that like you might look at it and think you see that it's kind of a big dumb thing, but it might be one of those really smart fun movies. You never know if you're going to get dumb fun or smart fun with this type of pulpy summer movie. But I agree with you, Steve, that it feels like I sometimes am wrong about what might hit with mass audiences, but it feels like one of those movies that might feel like something different, even though it's a sequel. The fact that it's not, superheroes, and it's not Star Wars, and it's not, whatever. It's not whatever franchise people are sort of sick of. So, yeah. And I think, for me, I think Glenn Powell is a guy who I've seen be really charming and interesting in a couple of things. And I've also seen him be just sort of like the good looking guy they stick in a movie like this. And so this is kind of like, this feels to me like that Chris Pine in Jurassic Park kind of role, where this could be like a great step forward, for him to be like a leading man who can really pull off the charm. Or it could be one of those things where you go, darn it, they stranded this guy, with not a lot of material. So I don't know. I feel like this is a good trailer, and you never know whether a good trailer is really selling you the movie that it seems to be. But I feel like there was a huge reaction to this in my little world of people saying like, well, I'm going to go see this. Even the people who are like, are ready to call it kind of popcorn fare, which it obviously is. So I think that's and what's the like a week before Deadpool and Wolverine?
Yeah, I think it's the 19th.
So that gives
Yeah,
them
the
a week
19th.
to be
Yeah.
a huge performer. But maybe it'll be like counter programming in a way. If people aren't sold on going to see another superhero thing, this will still be right there for them to for them to check out. So it probably seems smart to.
And both of them, I wanted to just mention. I was like looking at the production notes for both, and it's interesting that both of these movies coming out within a month of one another are directed by filmmakers whose prior movie were very small indie films that are beloved. Like, so Lee Isaac Chung, who's doing Twisters, did Minari a few years ago, and then Michael Stranovsky, who's doing Quiet Place Day One, did Pig, the Nicolas Cage film a few
that's
years
cool.
ago. So it's like this thing of like they pluck them from these like great character driven dramas, to drop them into these like big blockbuster tent poles, and it's like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I mean, that's such a common, it's such a weird common Hollywood thing. Like there's no ramp for them, and I mean, like they jump in, and I'm sure there's tons of production support, visual effects stuff, and both of these movies being heavy visual effects, large scale movies. It's like it's such an interesting practice and jump, and yeah, there's something to be said for bringing their success with the character stuff into movies like this to kind of add what John was just kind of getting at before. So I don't know. I'm optimistic. I'm bullish on both of these. Like I've heard actually good things of both, and more on Twisters being like kind of like a dark horse summer success. Maybe like expectations aren't kind of crazy through the roof for that one, and that could maybe overperform. But yeah, I don't know. Just two really cool trailers of two movies that I was already very excited about, but now even more so. But again, Quiet Place Day One comes out June 28th, and Twisters is July 19th.
Okay, wow.
We'll be talking about them soon enough.
No, it's interesting. You talk about that trajectory. I feel like that happens, and you just wonder, like, is it worth it for the director in a way sometimes to get catapulted? But you're right. If it's a supported production, and it might be someone who could really handle that kind of scope of the production, then really what it does is it just brings a little bit of style to these movies. And like you said, maybe somebody who has a sense of character and stuff. So I mean, it doesn't always have to be like a cynical move to say, oh, this person's cashing in, their chips, and like taking this big swing. It can be something that benefits the director and the movie, but sometimes it ends up being like an anonymous thing, and you go, oh, I wonder how that director feels about having made a movie that doesn't feel like their work the way some of their other stuff does. But no,
Right.
I didn't realize that Minari. I mean, I hadn't put it together that Minari's director was doing
Twisters.
Quiet Play. Oh, Twisters, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's move along. I guess Ronald, did you want to mention your physical?
Yeah.
Let's get physical.
Let's put on our leg warmers and dance to
Oh, yeah.
Let's Get
Yes.
Physical.
Give us a quick rundown here.
All right, so I'm getting into physical
You know
media
how in the song they say,
collective.
"I wanna get physical," because Ronald get physical, bum bum bum. Just a quick little sample.
So some movies I've collected. First is the first Justice League. Not a great movie, but I like the
I like having it.
yeah, I like the new edit, so I figure I'd jump in. Halo season 1 on 4K. I'm trying to get back into this. I think that I didn't hate it as much as I thought, and I think I'm just gonna watch it. And I heard season
That's
2.
a great reason to own it. You didn't hate it as much as you thought.
Yeah, season 2 gets good apparently, and it references quite a bit from the first season. So I'm gonna definitely get back into it. Super Mario Steelbook, which I've been looking for like crazy. Got lucky and picked it up at Soundgarden in Baltimore. Good place to buy things. I feel like I'm just giving that away, but it's one of my secret places. Not so secret anymore. The Burning Sea. So this is a part of that trilogy. So there's the Wave, the Quake, and the
Oh, wow.
Burning Sea. The Burning Sea is the third of the Disaster trilogy. Unfortunately, the same family isn't involved in this one. I kind of wish they were, but now we're getting into the imports, baby. Ooh, look at this shit. The Green Room.
That's a great movie.
Rest in peace, Anton Yelchin. This is a
so good in
special
it.
one, very close to my heart.
It's got one of the best lines. I can't remember the
Oh, the
exact
end
line.
at the end?
Yeah, you were much scarier in the dark. Is that what he says?
Yes.
Steve, is that it? Give me a fact check on it. Is on the line from Green Room. Is it you were much scarier in the dark?
Oh God, I don't remember the quote.
Anyway,
Yeah.
watch the movie to find out how I mangled that quote.
Yes. But very great movie. I'm really excited about watching this transfer. Okay, now we're getting into the craziness. Raging Fire. It is a oh my goodness, what's this guy's name? Why can't I remember his name?
Is that movie about that fire that got really big?
Yeah. It's the one with Donnie Yen and the fire. The fire in the police department because there's so much corruption.
Oh.
Yes. Raging Fire, really good movie. Import. These are all region free, in case you're wondering, Steve. I got really lucky and didn't get one that was like, it only plays in London. German media book copy of Bloodsport. Man, I've watched this already. This looks
Love it.
You're gonna have to come over and watch this with me. It has an Atmos mix, very atmospheric. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you get lucky in these old movies, get these like mixes that don't make any sense for the time. Like, it sounds incredible, looks incredible. And the last one, man, I showed you guys this earlier. For some reason, I don't know why this isn't in America. This makes no sense. This is why I deal with import stuff. Like, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed even the talk that we had about it,
Yeah, it's great.
And so I sought it out, and it's only
even
in
that.
Even that. And for some reason, it's only in London. Really, only. So I had to import it in. So that is my
John. Your quote is, "It's funny. You were so scary at night."
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I was cold.
Killer line.
Yeah.
Amazing,
great
amazing
line.
scene.
Cold-blooded.
Damn, dude. Love it. That's one of those viewing I can remember so vividly, going and seeing Green Room a weeknight. I feel like we even talked about this in the pod. Like, nobody in the theater, like my own private screening of Green Room, and like just being floored by it. Like, I was just like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, so good, man.
And this is like fresh off of Blue Ruin, right? Blue Ruin came out first, right?
Yeah, Blue Ruin came out first. Yeah.
Is he gonna do another color?
Yeah, I hope he does.
Yeah, red.
What has he done since?
I don't know, man.
What was that Netflix one?
Purple Car.
No. No. Hold the Dark.
Oh yeah.
Hold the Red Dark. Dang. Why didn't he have a color?
Well, he did 2 of the episodes of this most recent season of True Detective.
Oh
Oh,
wow.
right.
Yeah,
I
yeah, he
think
did.
That's
and
pretty
I
damn
think
cool.
I saw his name pop up on 2 of them.
that's right. I think there was maybe some weirdness there. I don't know if that was like, him leaving that production. Like, I don't know if he was supposed to
Mm.
direct the whole thing and then left after 2 or something. I don't know.
Well, actually, was that? Hold on a second. Was that this?
He did. I think
I
he
might
worked
be
on season
mixing.
3 of True
Oh, that
Detective.
maybe that's what it was.
Well, now I'm
Maybe that's what I'm
curious.
thinking. I remember seeing like his name come up in an article I was reading about this season, but I think it was maybe referencing. Yeah, I think you're right, John. I think it was the season prior.
I believe that he worked on the one prior, but I don't know if he also
That's the one
worked
with
on.
Mahershala, right?
Yes. Okay. He directed 2
Yeah.
episodes of the 2019
Yeah. Okay.
version.
Okay. That's right. That's right.
Um,
I got them mixed up.
but yeah, his discography, his filmography is Murder Party, Blue Ruin, Green Room, Hold the Dark, and Rebel Ridge, which is coming soon.
Okay.
It's in post production now. Post production.
I'm looking up just I would just want a copy of Blue Ruin. Just a Blu-ray is $60. Apparently it's out of print. I really wanted it. I really want this movie.
What is Rebel Ridge? Is that the Tom Hardy one?
Rebel Ridge stars Aaron Pierre, Anna
Oh
Sophia
no.
Robb, James Badge Dale, James Cromwell, and Don Johnson.
Yeah. Oh wow.
But it's
Okay.
Oh, there was one thing I wanted to mention in the physical media report that I was doing. Man, this year is the 40th anniversary of A Nightmare on Elm Street. And it was just announced that Zavi's going to release a 4K remaster of A Nightmare on Elm Street, man. Steelbook, all these extra documentaries that are going to be involved that I've never heard of.
It's funny
So
when you
alternate,
sent that image of it and it said like artwork to be TBD or whatever.
yeah,
It's so weird. I saw people posting the announcement and there
it's a
being like
huge deal.
no, but like saying specifically that like apparently the artwork has been like very divisive and it may be being redone for that release.
Is it
Which
like the one with the claw between the girl's legs or something? Because
I don't know. It was the same day you sent it to me. I saw another person posted
divisive.
an article saying that the artwork was not on the release because it's possibly being redone. Or some weird thing like that. And because
That is so
like,
strange.
why would they release that without artwork? Like that is
Yeah.
such a big part of the visual element of Freddy Krueger. Like
Right.
it's
But also
such
and to get people to
anything you
pre-orders.
announce like that,
Yeah.
to show you the key art or some
yeah,
version
you
of key
want
art.
that some version of it, right? Exactly.
Like they just announced Purple Rain. I saw the cover. I immediately pressed pre-order.
Exactly. Like it.
Sometimes that'll be the thing that makes you order the thing that in some way you already have seen or own, but you're like,
Yes.
no, I want to have that.
Well, I mean, even like Ronald, you've made comments on here,
Yeah.
and I've done the same thing when I used to buy this stuff all the time. It's like I may have already had it, but if it was gorgeous, I want that too.
Yeah, you want
You
that.
know, it's like I want that.
Yes.
It's gonna look amazing on my shelf.
It's gonna look amazing.
That superficial reaction, but it's like
Yeah.
you love a title so much, you want all those beautiful variants of it.
Well, when you're
Yeah.
gonna get physical, you kind of that's part of it. Like
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
if I buy a
really
nice
is.
edition of a book, I do read the book and then I put it on the shelf and I sometimes take it down and paw it because I like having it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think you, Ronald, you share on social media. That's your form of like taking you're like, look at this, especially when you did those custom covers for your
Oh, can I bring those? Let me bring them. All right, hold on. Let me find them. Give me a second.
What was the last physical thing you bought, Steve? Like movie or even music?
Oh my God, John. I bought it was a Scream release. I think it was like a Scream steelbook. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I was like, it's such a rare thing now. I don't even have. I mean, I still own the hardware to be able to play them.
Yeah, I'm the same. I have
like,
nothing set up currently.
Exactly.
I'm actually going to probably
hook
up one of the PS4s down here just so I can have some way to play physical media because I don't like not being able to like play a commentary track if I want to, you know.
Right. Yes. I've been trying to like think about that, like trying to put. So I bought a Blu-ray player, 4K player off of Facebook for like $45. I got really lucky. That's kind of what I think I'm gonna do. My sister also needs one, and she's like afraid to go to the store and buy one for some reason. She doesn't want to get the wrong one, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking about helping her get one through Facebook.
Yeah, I just looked on my order for me, and the last one I bought, John, was the Scream limited edition steelbook.
Oh, love a steelbook.
And that was, I don't even, what year was that? That was 2021.
Wow.
Oh,
That's the last one I purchased.
I just pre-ordered Purple Rain, Freddy, and Monkey Man. So I'm pretty excited about those. And then a German Purple Rain media book. So hopefully
Nice.
I get that at some point too. But I just wanted to show these steelbooks I designed. So where's the thing? Masters of Steel is a guy's name. And you can make so this is high tension because I bought here's a cheat code on eBay. You can buy just the discs sometimes. Sometimes people don't care and they just want the case for some reason. So I actually designed the inside too. And then I did Into the Spider-Verse because we talked about this. They were online for like $200. So I made my own for like 50. So this is just the city and he's upside down and then the same inside.
We should offer every episode of Movie Schmovie downloaded into like every episode in its own disc.
That'd be crazy.
Sell them to collectors. We'll start releasing them. First episode, and eventually we'll have 412 steelbooks with some
commentary.
We'll throw in high def video of us doing commentary on the episode.
That would be fun.
No, it's fun to put together that kind of package, especially when you don't think if you don't have the packaging, but even if the packaging is just kind of lacking, that they put out, like it's if you have it so it can look nice, then why not?
Yeah,
obviously there's a guy whose whole business is based around that, so clearly you're not the first person to need that.
Yep.
All right, well that was
let's get physical. There. Yep, let's go.
Sorry, what has anybody else seen?
Can I talk about one thing that I saw? No, you guys could go. I've been talking. What have you seen?
When we started recording, I was like, I don't think I've seen anything. And I lied because I did watch something with my wife for the first time in a while because we don't watch any movies together.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't like anything at all dark or loud or aggressive, violent, action, anything like that anymore. It's got to be a rom-com or a drama, a rom drama, whatever you want to call them. So yeah, last week, sorry, I got a piece of fuzz on my face. A new release on Amazon Prime Video. Anne Hathaway's new romantic drama called The Idea of You, which is based on a book. It's directed by Michael Showalter. He also co-wrote the screenplay for it. And I can't remember the guy's name. Is a younger. That's the whole premise of the story, is that it's basically her character takes her daughter to a concert and to see like her favorite boy or a boy band that she used to like or currently still enjoys. And he's one of the singers in the group, and they kind of strike up a conversation and kind of fall in love. And it's kind of about the age difference and him being a celebrity and her being a single mother that just turned 40. And I thought it was pretty great, actually. And I think that it's just like another point on the Michael Showalter tally board, because I feel like a lot of what he's been making as a director, writer has been pretty good. And I think this one just is really great. It's funny, it's sweet, it's romantic. They both look amazing in the film, so that helps. And I don't know, it just surprised me a lot. Aaron loved it. I thought it was really good. It has a great ending. And the guy, his name is Nicholas Galitzine. Most people probably know him from the Netflix romantic comedy Purple Hearts. And he was also in the Amazon, I think it's Amazon Prime or maybe Hulu, the red, white, and royal blue that kind of went, it kind of broke through the zeitgeist last year. Um, Another like kind of a rom com, but I thought it was really great. I mean, just like a really good character, cool, interesting people. He sings, he is very musical, so he does a lot of singing in the movie, which is kind of cool. Um, but yeah, I've always really liked Anne Hathaway for a long time, and I know she gets kind of a bad rap sometimes, for I don't even know what because she's like a theater geek or like just the way she kind of presents herself sometimes. I guess I've seen some people talk about her being kind of like pompous or like kind of a little egotistical or I don't know, pretentious. Um, Mainly in interviews, I guess, but I don't know. I've always really thought she was a really great actress, and I think this kind of movie is kind of like a phase for her. Maybe she's entering. Definitely got like real strong Julia Roberts vibes, like in her prime with her romantic comedy dramas. So and that's a compliment because Julia Roberts is probably my number one, and I was really surprised how much I enjoyed it, and it's right there on Amazon Prime if you want to check it out. And again, it is called The Idea of You.
Well, I guess I'll throw out a couple things I've seen. I saw a movie at the Maryland Film Festival last Friday that was a screening that they invited students, local students to, and so I was there with one of the classes, at the film department that I teach in the magnet school. So it was a bunch of ninth and 10th graders that were with us, and I think it was interesting to see how they kind of calmed down and watched this movie that is very sweet in some ways, but is also sort of not totally geared at kids and some others. There's just some kind of themes in it, and some. I mean, it is in a way that it's like a family movie in this way. I think kids could enjoy it, but also there's plenty of stuff that might go over a kid's head. But it's a movie called Robot Dreams, an animated film it's written and directed by Pablo Berger. I think it's a co-production with I think it's Spanish and French film companies, but it's based on an American artist's graphic novel. A woman named Sarah Varon did this graphic novel back in 2010 that the director um, read and was always kind of affected by it. And it just says on Wikipedia that he kind of kept going back to it and had a visualization in his mind of how it could be made into a film. And the author of the book, Sarah Varon, was at the film festival, and she didn't say too much about it, but she did talk about how, like, it was fun to see how they kind of fully realized the story of her graphic novel, but that, the only thing she said that she felt was different, or that, that in her story, it was like everybody's sweet. And in the movie, some of the characters are mean. She said that was the only real difference that she noticed. But I think in order to make it into a film, they had to sort of create a little bit more of a a little bit more dynamism between the kind of sweetness and the sort of the tragic aspect. But it is like a tragic story in some ways, but it's also very funny. It's a very appealing animation style. It's one of those animated films where there's so much fun to be had just soaking in the details. Like
Right.
sometimes animation does that, where it's like you just look at the frame and every little detail that's hand drawn. There's pleasure to be had in the way that it's designed and the way that it's brought into this world. And one of the things I noticed in Robot Dreams was all the product names are real, and like everything has like I don't know, for some reason why that made it feel kind of interesting, that it really felt like they really, if it was a movie that was being referenced, it was using that movie's name. If it was a product, you were seeing the design of that product. It's set in the 80s, so it's a little bit of a retro thing with the design. But I don't know, it's an interesting world. It's like a mixture of animals and the kind of real world, sort of anthropomorphized animals. But it's this little dog who wants a friend, and he orders this robot in the mail that then becomes his friend, and then it kind of just takes off from there. Very sweet, interestingly paced movie. You kind of sink into it, and it just takes you away. But I really think the charm of it kept charming me with those little details that I'm talking about, and it really is like kind of beautiful animation, kind of old school animation. So I would recommend that. I think it comes out in theaters later this month. I think the U.S. release for it in theaters is May 31st. So it came out in film festivals last year and has kind of been making the rounds. But I don't know. I could see people really enjoying this movie. It's very sweet. And let's see what else. What else did I watch? Oh yeah, well I told you guys I saw The Fall Guy in the theaters. Yeah, where else would I see it? Um, and if you're watching Fall Guy on a screen like this, get the fuck out of town. Um, the only way to watch the cinema is at Cinemark, Ronald. Did you know that?
Ah.
Or is it nothing's more cinematic than Cinemark? Is that what they say? There's some line like that. No, I think if you are curious about the Fall Guy, you probably already know what elements you're curious about. Ryan Gosling's kind of having a moment. This is in some ways kind of like his follow up to the success of Ken. Is doing this movie. This is like cashing in that charm and appeal that he has been kind of growing lately. Emily Blunt is another person who I think people generally think of as solid to great in things. She's just fun to see pop up. And then Donovan is it Donovan Leitch, the director. It's like this is like
David Leitch.
David Leitch. Donovan Leitch is the actor from the 80s or 90s, isn't he? Yeah,
Yes.
but David Leitch is like this guy who's like having a moment too, and we know what we're thinking of him from. He's like the John Wick guy, you know what I mean? So there's this interesting coalescing of these people's appeal and fame at this moment, and I think that's really what can sell you on this movie. I don't think like from a plot standpoint, this is like a brilliantly conceived movie, and I don't know that it really holds together like all the way through. But if you want to think of one word, it's a fun movie. And the star wattage of Ryan Gosling is on full display. There's 2 or 3 scenes between him and Emily Blunt that really are like the reason why this movie stuck to my ribs at all. It's such a light, like fun confection. Some gags get kind of overplayed. I mean, it's just like it's a big packed movie that's really trying to do a lot. And I might be happier with a version of it that tried to do a tiny bit less. It was a little bit smaller because of how much the human story, the almost rom-com element between those two was so strong and really was the strength. But there's a lot of fun to be had with the action. And Ryan Gosling is like, you come into this movie knowing that he's the leading man who we know he's going to be kind of self-deprecating. And so there's going to be a little bit of that, without winking too hard. This movie winks really hard with a lot of meta conversation about, different things that they're talking about because they're making movies in the movie. It's about a stuntman. And then Emily Blunt is the director that he has a romantic past with. And so she's kind of abusing him in his role as a stuntman, but this is other adventure story going on that's like action packed. So like there's a lot going on and he plays that stuff really well. I like I said, I think by the time it gets to the end, there's really not much concern you have for what's going on with the plot. But yeah, I think people are gonna, if they come to this movie, they're gonna come for the 2 stars that really are the reason to see it. And I just was wondering, like, this movie got some pretty positive buzz from pre-release screenings, hits the theaters, does okay in its first weekend, really kind of underperforms. I mean, like the question of what gets people out to see movies is a question we have right now. And so I don't see this as like a failure of the star power of Ryan Gosling. I don't even necessarily see it as a failure of the IP of The Fall Guy, because I don't think most people know that this movie is IP, that it's based on an 80s television show. Seems pretty irrelevant to the way this movie's being sold. So I don't know, like I mean, you guys haven't seen it, but what are your feelings just about like, what is it that makes a movie connect in 2024? Is a charming star who everybody loves and who kind of, won everybody's hearts with that Oscar performance and everything, like a guy who's kind of riding high. Like if Brian Gosling can't open a movie, then who can? I don't know. Has he ever been that kind of star and we just kind of thought he was because he was in Barbie? Like, do you guys have any feelings on the referendum on the star power of Ryan Gosling?
Ronald, do you have any feelings on this?
I don't. It's not that he's not a star or that he can't make a good movie that could get this. I just think that this movie was kind of a hard sell, man. I feel like when I was watching the trailer, I knew what it was, but I know that once you get too meta, once you get into too much, like if it's not simple, a stuntman gets kidnapped, a stuntman and has to save on a set of nope.
Yeah, that's it.
People checked out. People check out.
Well,
And
even if they think it looks fun, they don't really know what they're looking at. You know what I mean? I think what you're saying is
yeah,
very true, because I don't even know
yeah,
that what you just described is fully sold in the trailer, and then what's in the movie is even slightly. It's not even that much more explained in the movie. It's like you're
yeah.
expected to kind of coast by on the charm of the actors. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
right, right. Yeah, that I
Yeah,
think that's what it is for
yeah. I think he's right. I
marketing.
mean, I think that they are stars. They're celebrities, maybe more so. Like, I think really kind of, if anything, over the last year, kind of shown like spectacle is kind of what gets people into seats.
Yeah,
Spectacle is what takes people into the theater. Well, it's spectacle. So it probably in order is it's spectacle, it's family films, and in some ways still, especially for scale, horror films. So I mean, I feel like they're all kind of transportive and kind of different than what you see, either what you're watching on streaming services you know, uh, or just in what you kind of see day to day. But I feel like those kinds of things are kind of still the bellwethers for what are still performing in theaters, at least. Even though this movie, I haven't seen it yet, but even though this movie does have spectacle, it's got, like, from what I've heard, some pretty incredible action sequences and just a lot of fun stuff to look at. But it's just that human piece of it that is the differentiation there, because it's like you look at movies like Dune and Godzilla, X Kong, and presumably this weekend, the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is looking to possibly overperform. It's like these are things that are just not people doing stunts. It's like there are other things happening that people just are willing to spend their time and money to go to a theater to kind of be transported and to kind of, look at something that isn't, for lack of a better term, like real. It's like it's there's still that fantasy element to movie going that I think is really one of the pulls and draws still that, are kind of setting some of these movies up to perform, overperform, like it's just, and even talking earlier in the movie, like talking in the podcast, sorry, about like Twisters and A Quiet Place. Like these are, in Deadpool and Wolverine, like these are like kind of out there spectacle movies. And, I think that's still at this point, at least, what is putting butts in seats, regardless of the star that's in the movie. And I
right.
think it kind of sets them up to fail in a lot of ways. And I mean, also one thing I did want to say, like, it's crazy to me that this movie costs $130 million. Like
yeah.
that is just out of control. Like, and
If
that's
you
maybe because you have two huge stars in it and they probably take up a third, if not more, of that budget. Like that's just crazy.
I think if you saw it, you would see how it cost that much, but you might question why it cost that much, if that makes sense. Like you see it sort of on the screen, but it's like the movie could have been a little, like I said, it could have been smaller, and I think it would have improved from it. Like, for instance, there's a lot of like stunts that get so crazy, action scenes that get so crazy that are so CGI assisted that it sort of blurs the reason why you're watching a movie that's supposedly a love letter to like stuntmen and
Right.
stunt work.
Right.
And so
Right.
it almost seems like this movie could have really won, like, the winning formula would have been some really like fiendishly cleverly designed stunt sequences
Right.
that are so real, and film it so that we feel the realness of it, and then you don't have to have, like, literally, if you saw it, you'd know what I mean, just the kind of spiraling out of control sort of action sequences that you can feel the CGI creeping in. You see when it happens, and it
Right.
distances you from
Right.
it. But I think that's where a lot of that budget goes, is in these almost cartoonish action
Oh,
sequences,
100%.
you
Yeah.
know?
And it's
So,
kind of like a weird decision too, because you're talking about making a rom-com that's also an action adventure film.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, how many chips do you put in each of those buckets? Whether in terms of, if you're having amazing stars, big name stars, which they both are, especially Gosling, and your money is going towards that, maybe you don't go maybe you don't overflow the cup in terms of the action of that film and the budget for that action, if the focus is on the rom-com, or if the focus is to be the action and you're going to have the set pieces that are going to be so expensive. You could, maybe you don't have someone in the film that is going to be at the level of Ryan Gosling or Emily Blunt, because they're obviously not the draw. That's not the draw to the theater. The draw
Yeah.
is this. The draw is the spectacle.
That's Donovan Leitch. I just wanted to
Yeah,
be
like that's the Blob, right?
yeah. Yeah. No,
Um,
I'm wrong way. There we go. There he is.
but
There's a little chip.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really interesting thing to think about because it really is like they tried to kind of stir this all together in a big budget action adventure film that's also a rom-com with two big stars, and
It's a lot.
it did not spell success. The budget
Yeah.
is way too high. It came in below the lower end of projections, and hopefully it has word of mouth and legs over the next couple of weeks, to kind of maybe get that number up higher. But it's just a weird approach to like trying to either make a franchise or even just to have a movie be successful. We've talked about the budget stuff so much on this podcast because there's no reason that a movie that is basically all CG mocap apes costs less than the Fall Guy. Like
Mm.
how is that possible? It's like you just went too far. I think I can't wait. That's it. I can't wait to see this movie, and this is another movie that Aaron wants to see. So this is something that we can see together, which is always a plus in my book. But it's just like because I really want this movie to succeed because I love movies like this.
No, Steve, I think you will probably. I would almost imagine you having a very similar reaction in terms of entertainment value to mine, which is that like I think about
Right.
3/4 of this movie really works.
Right.
And the parts that it's throwing a lot of ideas out, and the stuff when you have that much stuff that doesn't quite work in a movie like this, it does make you wonder structurally. It almost feels like a movie that got rewritten and like worked on the fly a lot. And the movie tries to
Right.
almost
Right.
comment on that. There's talk in the movie about third act problems because they're making a movie, and some of that stuff is fun and some of it is not. You know what I mean? So it's just like,
Yeah.
but I feel like my problem with this movie is that it's sort of it's light, and the pleasures of it are light, and the things that you like about it are there's like a funny scene where she keeps making him run a stunt on set to kind of get back at him for something she's mad at him about as the director. She keeps saying, let's try that stunt again, where he's like getting set on fire, and like while that's happening, they're having a conversation across the set like on bullhorns about their relationship, and it's like that kind of scene is the heart of the movie. The stuff where
Yeah.
he's running around and like explosions are happening and stuff, it's like that's fun, but it feels more of a spoof, like a spoof mixed with a romantic comedy, mixed with an action movie. It
Yeah.
feels like a lot to take on. And I think David Leitch, there's a certain side of it. Like there's some moments where there's certain pleasure to have just in terms of, oh, you're looking at like a movie set and it's like a romanticized version of a big movie. Some of that stuff does feel really fun and all the layers really click. And I think
Yeah.
that's where if the whole movie could have felt like those moments, then this would have been a movie that I would have been like skipping when I left the theater practically. But instead it's more like it just kind of washed away. Like the next day I tried to think of what I was even holding on to about it. It's not like that it was
Yeah.
bad in any way, but nothing really stuck to my ribs except for the chemistry of the two people. And even not even so much the chemistry as just their performance and the fact that they have a few scenes to play that are visually and dialogue wise are interesting. So anyway, definitely like anyone who thinks they want to see this, they're probably going to have some kind of a good time with it. It's just not this weird blast home run kind of thing that I had thought maybe it would be.
It'd be yeah.
But I
Right
didn't
on.
walk in with expectations that were crazy or anything. I got I still knew trailers are trailers and movies are movies.
Cool. What else? Anything else you guys wanted to mention before we wrap up?
Oh yeah, I saw a Hulu documentary called The Contestant. Have you guys ever heard of this?
I have
Yeah.
heard of it, but I have not seen it.
Yeah, it's about a guy affectionately known as Natsubi. Um, so in the early 90s, a guy agreed to get put into a room and stripped of his clothes and essentially had to make 1,000,000 yen, which is about $8,000, through mail-in contests. That was the way that he left.
Like sweepstakes.
Yeah, it's but it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So essentially, his freedom, yeah, but that's also how he survived. So he's given almost no food, no nothing, stripped of his clothes, which is actually how eggplant emoji got started. So apparently, when he was nude, they put an eggplant in front of his penis in the early 90s. And that's how eggplant got associated with penis. Very strange. But his name is Natsubi because that's not his real name. It's actually Japanese for eggplant. for a couple reasons. His penis, but also his face was very big, and they thought it was shaped like an eggplant. So it was like all this really rough stuff. So he's like in this house doing these sweepstakes, trying to win food because he's like losing weight at a tremendous rate, and it's all on camera. And he winds up staying for a year and 6 months in this place and then gets put into another space. He's commits to put in another space. It's like one of the more heartbreaking stories I've ever seen because, like, you agree, fame is very different at this point. People don't know that they can become stars. So he moves from this rural area in Japan to Tokyo. And his mom is basically like, the first rule, don't get naked to get famous. You know what I mean? Like that's like literally the first thing she says to him. And that's the first thing that happens to him when he gets on the show.
Right.
It starts off really funny and this becomes heartbreaking, man. Like there's a scene where he's supposed to it's over, and to surprise him, they bring him to a live audience because he's wildly famous at this point. He gets taken from his home that he was in, the home that he's known. He's also become suicidal. He's imagined all these things. He's like very lonely at this point. Takes him to a point that looks just like his regular place that he's been in. And so instinctually he takes off his clothes. The walls fall down, and then he's just in front of the whole audience. And it is one of the more heartbreaking scenes I've ever seen in my life. Like Aaron starts like basically crying, and she's not really much of a mushy person when it comes to this kind of stuff. It is a wild study in fame, and the guy that produces it is just a heartless piece of shit. It's just like he thinks of himself as a genius who deprived this guy of his livelihood for a year and a half. But it's a cool ass documentary. And there's this place in Japan is like a sister company of a BBC channel. So there's some BBC coverage of it as it happens. And there's a British woman that had kind of first hand experience because she worked in the studio as on a kind of an American representative. I'm sorry, as a English speaking representative for Japan as it pertained to like TV. She was like a crossover sort of person. It's a rough documentary, but really cool. Seeing his resiliency is just kind of amazing. But The Contestant on Hulu, incredible documentary. Incredible documentary.
No, it sounds pretty upsetting.
Yeah, it is. It is crazy
like
upsetting.
a really cruel show. I mean, I don't know. I just what
Yeah.
I know about it was and I think the reason why I hadn't watched it yet was kind of your thing about like true crime. And I even said it at the time, like for me, when it's like psychologically harrowing for somebody, that's when I
Yes.
have a hard time like deciding I'm going to watch something. Is because
Yes.
it's like I
And
stuff like
when you find
this.
out the business of it, like the business of it is so much crazier than you could imagine. Like it's not just the
Mhm.
footage. It's like a random thing that you're gonna find out when you watch the documentary. It's like anything you could think of, they monetized of
Right.
this guy, and he got nothing from it. It's just it's heartbreaking, man. But really,
Um,
really cool.
I watched Problemista. Have either of you guys seen Problemista?
No, I want to see that.
It's funny if you like Julio Torres,
I do.
and his kind of spacey kind of like naive sort of character comedy, and if you like Tilda Swinton, I mean, I feel like that's what this movie is. It's those two energies meeting, and she's
Okay.
great and funny, and he's if you know his comedy, it's wild and mild at the same time, and like really he comes across really well as a performer in this. I think as a director, it might be kind of loosey goosey when it could have used a little more tightness just in terms of kind of the visual style or just the visual movement. But I mean that's a mild criticism really for a movie that I think if you know who Julio Torres is and you think he's funny, this is kind of that like the movie version of that person's comedy. You know, there's a lot of really silly things in it. And I will say that you two will probably at least have the same flashbacks I did working for Apple computers, because there's a whole plot line about like how she expects him. He's kind of her intern. He kind of becomes her. In order to stay in the country, he needs to be sponsored by somebody. And so, I mean, there's a lot, there's like a slightly heavier story going on slightly beneath the whimsical part of this movie. And I think it juggles those things well. But I saw where some people were criticizing that the sort of immigration storyline was maybe like, you know, sidelined for the sillier stuff. But I feel like it was kind of merged nicely. But the idea is he takes on this thankless job of kind of being an intern for Tilda Swinton's character, who was an art critic, whose husband was an artist, played by Riza, and he has cancer, and so he freezes himself. In order to pay for his cryogenic freezing to be maintained, he needs her to sell some of his paintings while he's frozen. And so she's trying to sell his paintings and put on an art show, and she needs an intern to help her. And then this is where enter Julio Torres, you know, who is a wannabe toy inventor who has applied at Hasbro and is like hoping he gets a job. I mean, it's like it keeps kind of spiraling out, but the details are that kind of silly detail. And there's just some silly little gags in it that are just only come from that kind of character stuff. It's a different kind of quirk than, you know, you might associate with, you know, seeing Tilda Swinton play a larger than life character. You might picture like Coen Brothers or Wes Anderson, but it's like it's that, but it's off in its own little world. You know, it's in a little slightly different direction. And I think that I think that if you like his style and you like those actors, I could see a lot of people having a lot of fun with this. And I found myself kind of consistently kind of chuckling. But the thing that you'll give Apple Store flashbacks is that there's a whole plot line about FileMaker Pro and how she's like frantically saying, but my databases have to be synced. I need to be able to see it on my iPad. I need to be able to see it at my house in Maine. And the way she's like clutching the mouse and clicking frantically, it reminded me so much of doing tech support. And like someone, I could totally see a Tilda Swinton-esque person coming in waving their laptop around at the Apple Store saying, I need my database, you know, like I need my database now. It was supposed to be accessible wherever you told me it would be in the cloud, you know. So there's a whole storyline about FileMaker Pro. And having anxiety about using FileMaker Pro. So I think that, I don't know, that felt so well observed. And I guess it's full of things like that are very mundane, but kind of amped up. And I feel like Julio Torres is doing something that's just exactly it. It's like surreal, but it's also observational. Yeah, if you like his comedy, you'll probably like his movie.
Very cool. That's on digital right now. That's where you saw
that?
Or
yeah, okay. Just hit digital from it was at the Charles Theater a couple of weeks ago, and now it's rentable at home. So
very cool. All right, perfect. That'll be an episode, I think. Again, next week, required viewing. John picked The Swimmer. The Swimmer, 1968 on Amazon Prime Video, as Ronald had said. So definitely check that out and check in next week when we go over that. I don't know what we're talking about next week on the pod. I don't know. There's movies coming out, but again, I want to try to see Fall Guys. So I really want to see Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, I'm going to see that this weekend.
Hopefully I can see one or both of them, and hopefully maybe we can talk about that next week. But I think we're
going to announce something fun next week too. But I guess we'll just give them that. We'll just say that next week we're going to.
There it is. We're going to announce something next week, so look forward to that.
This is like the teaser for the teaser. You know.
Yeah. That's what that would be. Yeah. Teaser one. Movie.com is the website if you want to go there to subscribe to the podcast, listen to past episodes, or link from there to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Movie podcast. If you want to watch the videos, and like John said at the top, do yourself a favor, go back and watch last week's. If you're just joining us for the first time now, you don't want to miss that video.
Steve,
I promise you.
When I went back and watched it, my favorite part is after the event happens, and I'm trying not to laugh, and in order for you not to laugh, you're literally doing.
I can't. I
can't
make eye contact
because Ronald was trying to carry on after the event.
Sorry,
and
sorry.
Well, the thing about region free or whatever, he was just talking about it, and you couldn't handle it. And no, that was my. That's when I lost it. Yeah,
that's how I cope, man. I just gotta. I gotta ear muff it, blind me. I can't be involved. It's the only way I could get through it. And it went that was the case last week. But yeah, it's a fun video. That's last week's episode 412. But yeah, We'll check in next week for sure. And thank you so much for listening. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.